all, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today on the webinar on how to hire and build a CX team for the future. My name is Brendan. I'm from a company called Fraser Tremble Executive, and joining me today, we have a great panelist. So we have Greg Curcio from City of Stonnington. We have Louise Lysaght from HotDoc, and we have my business partner and wife, Laura Fraser. So today, guys, I wanted to quickly go through a bit of an agenda. So what we're going to first go through is the bit of introductions, which we've pretty much done. I want to be able to thank all the guys for joining us today as well and taking time out of their very busy schedules to come in and give some of their insights and some of their experiences in building out CX teams. I'll also have a few polls that we want to be able to run through with everybody. Predominantly very easy, simple questions, but it gives us a good indication of the cohorts that we have among us today, of people who are early in the journey of building out CX teams, people who already have CX teams who want to maybe change the structure a little bit to be more dynamic, or are just here to listen in and hear what everyone else is doing. And then we have a few other ones just around where CX sits within your organization. So why are we here today? Essentially, myself and Laura from Fraser Tremble, we constantly get asked by a lot of our clients and different people coming through as to how do we build a CX team? Where do we start? What does the perfect CX team look like? And that's why we pulled together the list of panelists that we have. Myself, I come from a background in strategic sales, account management, moved into CX about 7 or 8 years ago, and I've had the pleasure of working with all different sizes of businesses, whether it's small startups who are really early in the journey, right through to City of Stonnington, who I'm currently working with, who are a really mature organization, but again, looking to build out those processes of CX. So I'll let Greg talk more to that. So Greg has come in, City of Stonnington, who are a well-established organization. So those who don't know, they're the local municipal around the Toorak Malvern area. But they're 6-12 months into their journey into CX, and they've done amazing things so far, but very early in that journey. We have Laura, who is an executive recruiter, who she has had over 8 years experience in Melbourne alone, working across that business transformation space, helping businesses really pull together the talent they really need for success. And then we have Louise from HotDoc. And before we go any further, we would like to congratulate Louise on her recent win. HotDoc were awarded the winner of customer experience in a crisis. I know, Louise, you've something that you've worked very hard to achieve, and congratulations to you and the team.
Thanks so much, Brendan.
So without further ado, I love polls. So if I could ask Laura to pull up the first poll on basic current structure. So if you're building a CX team, what are you currently building a CX team? Simple question. We want to build a CX team. We are building a CX team right now. We're restructuring the team, or none of the above. We're just curious whether people are listening. So keen to hear people's feedback.
Surprised you didn't have your own picture up there, Brendan, for that.
I was tempted. I really was.
You can say, I love beards.
Oh, that's a good one. How important is a beard in a CX team? I think that's probably the next question.
That's a prerequisite.
It is. Laura, how's that poll looking? Do you have to close the poll and give us the answer?
Oh, do I?
Yes.
Oh, here, right, gotcha. Yeah, quite interesting actually. So I'll just end it. So 67%, none of the above. Curious what everybody else is doing. Love a bit of curiosity. Next was 19%. We're building a CX team now. 10% we're restructuring the team, and 5% we want to build one.
Okay, it's a good range.
I think you can all see them now, can't you?
Yes, can.
Yeah. Oh,
cool.
Perfect.
Okay. And jump on to the next one.
All right.
So this is one that's close to my heart, and one that it's a constant question that we get asked as well about where to place CX within an organization. So again, we're just interested to find out. There's no right or wrong answer. Customer service, whether it's a sales or growth, marketing, operations, and potentially finance, innovation, or CX is its own function or other. I think there's probably enough time on that one, Laura.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Close it and show us.
Couldn't agree more.
That is an outstanding outcome and one I'm very happy to see. I think there's been a lot of talk over the years of where CX sits across an organization, and traditionally it was that customer service or that marketing element. But as we all know, that marketing is more brand experience, customer service kind of resolution. Having CX as its own function really gives it that capacity to work right across the business and all those different stakeholders in between. Thanks for that, guys.
I wonder what the other was. I wonder what was in the other comment.
Yeah, true, guys. Throw in some other into the chat if you would.
Planning. Okay. Okay.
Planning, yeah.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
All business units. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for that.
Perfect. And the last but not least on the polls. So the biggest question of all, does CX have executive buy-in? I think this is probably one of the biggest questions that I come across when I'm dealing with kind of especially startups and how much involvement the executive team needs to have in a CX team. Everybody, yes, we all know we want to have everyone on board, but I'm keen to hear a little bit more on whether you guys actually have the CEO's buy-in, or you have executive backing, but not exactly the CEO, or you're struggling to get budget and you're pushing that uphill battle. Good news is it's only myself and Laura in this organization. So yeah, we're all executive buy-in.
100%. There's still a few more. We're up at about 80% of people who voted. I'll just leave it for a couple more seconds just to let everybody else finish. Yep.
Cool.
All right, I'll just end it there. Interesting. Okay.
Everyone's on board, even better again. I think, yeah, as I mentioned, having a leadership team who's on board for a CX journey, as both Greg and Louise will testify to, it really makes a big difference in being able to secure that budgeting, that funding to be able to move forward, do that innovation, bring in that new technology in as well. I do feel sorry for those people who are in the struggling to get budget or support, but it is a challenge that you can win. I myself have come from two different organizations where the leadership team had no interest in CX. It was purely put in place for lip service. But once you actually start getting a few little wins on the board, they start seeing some of that benefits, and they can really change their mind quite quickly. So I encourage you to keep going. And if you do have any questions on how I went about changing some of that, feel free to reach out as well. Always happy to answer that question. So guys, that's pretty much it from me. I'm going to hand over to Greg and let him tell you a little bit more about his journey.
Right. Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Laura, for having me. All right, let me share my screen. Not on mute? No? I think that's kind of the saying of the year, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Everyone can see that? Yes, great. Well, thanks very much. My name is Greg Curcio. I joined Stonnington about 6 months ago as a Director for Engagement and Innovation. And it's been quite an interesting induction. My first day was at home. My second day was also at home. And but today I'm actually in the office, which has been a lovely change out of the normal. So thanks to Brendan and Laura for this opportunity. So I'll take you through today is a little bit about Stonnington, some of the demographics and some of the key stats around our customers, just give a bit of context, and then a bit of a journey on what we've done in the last 6 months and how we've built the team out. Right, Stonnington community. So I'm really passionate about local government. So I've been in private sector most of my life, and this is my first opportunity to influence some really great outcomes for the community. And I think that's a really good, sobering journey for myself, which has been terrific. And Stonnington itself was situated within the inner east of Melbourne. So it's quite a large municipality. It had amalgamated over a period of time. And you'd be surprised, we've got quite a diverse set of customers. We have a median age of about 35. We also have some of the richest and most affluent folks in Melbourne. We also have the opposite end of the scale. So we also have a lot of challenges in the disadvantaged space as well, homelessness and you know, obviously some of those issues that pertain to that. So we're very cognizant that our demographic is quite varied, and as we looked at building out a CX strategy, we had to take that into consideration. And also future vision of where Stonnington as a city needs to be over the course of the next 10, 20 or 30 years. And that's obviously forever changing. So some key stats for you to share from that. So what did we do? We did, it's a very new directorate, and I'll take you through some of the other elements, but at the first instance, we built out a CX strategy, particularly when it comes to the understanding a targeted capability maturity model. So when we're building out a CX model, our view was to understand the current state. And that current state was based on a lot of feedback from our external stakeholders, our internal teams. And we mapped out quite a realistic, I think, where we are at across those key capabilities. And we've kind of built out some milestones over the course of the next 3 years. And the next 3 years are going to be very important to us. It actually ties into our broader transformation work, of which another part of my directorate actually leads. So you can see our first priorities, and you do have to start with some priorities as you start to build out the team, was really around understanding the customer, designing for the experience, and also lifting the profile of the customer across the organisation, hence building out a dedicated CX team right from the start. And we couldn't have done that and gone on this journey without a very supportive CEO and other executive teams. So Jackie Weatherall, CEO, joined about 12 months ago. And her first 100 days actually talked about being a customer-centric organisation and future ready. So that's really accelerated that approach, and we hope that that continues over the next few years. So that just gives you a bit of a broad case, and our first step was to measure the current state, and that actually then fed into the CX strategy, and more broadly what the whole organisation would look to, as well as the my own directorate moving forward. So engagement and innovation, and the reason why I've flicked up this slide is to give a sense of CX is just not CX without a holistic operating model. So we really concentrated in designing a technology and customer operating model to really help accelerate the enablers for a customer-centric organisation, and focused on 6 key result areas. So for us, it wasn't just about customer satisfaction, which is kind of our main game. We're sitting at about 74% from a community satisfaction score, which is a benchmark that's done in local government. We do want to hit above 80%, but to get there, there's a number of enablers which we need to get up and running. And an organisation which traditionally hasn't invested a lot in the CX, as well as technology, it really becomes quite an important facet to knit those two together, both customer and technology. And so our experience is really based on 3 main factors, and that is inform the customer, know the customer, and help the customer. Very similar themes as you probably see across the other industries as well. But the difference for us is that knowing the customer was the most important first step. And that kind of flavoured the way that our team was structured and how then the technology teams would end up interfacing with them. So engagement for us really is the end game. So local government is more about engaging as many people across the municipality as we can. The more people that engage with us, the more diverse conversations we have, the better planning decisions we'll make, and the better outcomes for the whole municipality. So customer experience really can help drive the levels of engagement across the municipality, and that's going to be very important for us as we look to plan for the future in a post-COVID world. So operating models, I'm a massive fan of that. Without an operating model, I believe that it's very hard to articulate roles, accountabilities, process handoff points. So for us, this is our operating model, and you can see that we've included technology, digital, customer experience, leadership, and analytics. And that's all pointing to knowing the customer with an integrated experience. And without this, we couldn't have gone to the next step in actually building out a CX dedicated team, and also what the future technology team needed to be to help with the experiences and the service design, which I'll get through in a moment. So I won't go through each of those individually, only to say that it is a bottom-up approach, and we have a lot of foundational activity when it comes to both technology and process design work to do. But our absolute focus was knowing the customer as much as we can and providing an integrated experience. and then working quite quickly with the rest of the organisation to plug those gaps in the short term and the long term. And a really heavy focus on the way that we use analytics. So the operating model itself around customer journeys, and I know we're all pretty familiar with this, a little bit different for us given our maturity. And I will say that our journey is just beginning, and we took the conscious effort to build a CX team with as much of the capability centralized as possible. And in 2 to 3 years, we'll teach that back out into the business. So what we wanted to do is the journey owners, the service designers, and the shared capabilities will sit in our directorate, and we'll partner with the other directorates, particularly planning, corporate services, and the community teams, to draw out what those service designs are. But the business really owns that change, and we'll be looking for the business units to be the champions of those changes, provide us with the subject matter experts so that we can design it appropriately. And then we'll take the accountability to build out the required resources to get the changes through. So this is the team. So all of that led to how we want to build that team. So we've got a couple of key areas. We've got a dedicated customer experience and strategy team, which I'll go into a bit more detail about those functions. And it's well supported about 2 areas that I'm pretty passionate about. One is the digital integrated experience and the traditional customer operational experience, which includes over-the-counter call services and information and knowledge management. The reason why we've split the operations area out is because prior to my arrival, we had experience together with the customer channels, and it just wasn't getting the right cut through. And we wanted to elevate the operations as much as the experience designers. And we're creating a dedicated digital marketing team to really get to work on an integrated digital experience. And it's going to be well supported by a new technology team and a new business unit around digital transformation, which includes growing new capabilities that will be taught into the various other areas. So those interested, here is our customer experience and strategy team. We're almost there, filling the roles, and it's not a big team. I mean, you know, we have 650 employees here at Stonnington. So it's not large by any stretch, but what we want to make sure it's pretty flat and has some key parts to this. One is around insights. The other one is program management when it comes to designing service designs. We call them service reviews, but it's essentially their CX journeys. And also support and change management. Now, the change management is an important part of this. We've chosen deliberately to insert some change management capability in the CX team because we feel that that will get the biggest traction. The other component, which is probably a little bit different, I'm not sure others' experiences, but I've deliberately added in process re-engineering and process architecture into this group. My background is Lean Six Sigma, and I did see some of the challenges between building a service and then throwing that over to the operations fence without an understanding of business processes. So we've consciously built that within this team because we believe that when the rubber hits the road and the processes are designed, the handoff points really come into play. And if we can't articulate the service journey in those level 3 and level 4 processes, then we'll miss a really great opportunity to make those processes as simple for the customers as possible. So that's kind of that integrated customer experience and process group coming to light there. And then finally, over the course of the next 3 years, where we're heading. So really, we're at the start of our journey. We're establishing, embedding some of these capabilities, but we are cognizant that customer experiences is just one part of our transformation group. It does need to work in concert with our digital transformation program, as well as our technology department. And each of those 3 departments will be critical in building capability in lockstep. It's no use for us building a very quick and fast and effective digital transformation program when the customer experience team is still very young in their journey. And we also have the added complexity around councillors and the governance process on making sure that the CX strategy is what the future vision of our new councillors will end up. So obviously, some of you know we're in the middle of local government elections. We still don't know who those councillors will be moving forward. But the really great opportunity for us is we're moving into a new council period over the next 4 years. And this fits very well into our new vision and council plan for the next 4 years. Our second horizon really moves into delivery and optimization of those processes and those journeys. And then hopefully by the time we hit our 3rd year, we'll be teaching those services back into the business. And I think for us, there'll be an evolution of the structures as we move forward. So as new capabilities tend to mature, we'll then build those out directly and teach those into the appropriate areas. So very much it's us centralizing all of the knowledge and the work so that we can build the capabilities for the rest of the organization and teach those back out. So that's it from our perspective. And look, I'm conscious there was a lot of detail in there, but I just wanted to share with you, we are very much at the start. And if you're ever interested about how we've gone about specifically setting up some of these capabilities, I'm more than happy to take it offline as well. But that's it from us. Thanks, Laura and Brendan.
Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate that. There's I've had the privilege of already seeing a lot of that information, but it's even better to hear coming out of your mouth as well, and getting more detail into it. Now we have had a lot of questions as well, which we'll hold off a lot of them towards the end. We can do the Q&A. One I will go to quickly. Claire asked, will you be sharing your slides, or are you able to share the slides?
Of course.
There you go.
Just let me know how. Maybe I just send it to you, and
Yeah.
Absolutely, not a problem.
Easily done. We'll send them across to Claire. And next up, we've got Louise. Louise, do you want to share your screen and tell us a little bit more about your journey through CX?
Absolutely. And hopefully you can all see that now. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Louise Lysaght, and I'm the head of customer experience at HotDoc. Greg, that was a great presentation. I really enjoyed seeing the start of your journey, and wish you all the best of luck with it. Hopefully I'll be able to hear more about how you go across that for sure.
Louise, we can only see your desktop. Sorry.
Oh, you can't see? Okay.
I can see your desktop.
Yeah, just give me a second and I'll get that for you.
It's not a good webinar without one little malfunction.
Now, hopefully you can.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, good. If it slips out again, Brendan, you're my eyes and ears to let me know. All right, so I'll just get started with who HotDoc are. So we are a startup kind of moving into being a scale up now, and we are a patient engagement platform. Our primary customer are general practitioners, and we provide products and services to about 18,000 general practitioners and now specialists across Australia. We were founded in 2012. So we're quite a bit into our growth now. We've just tipped over 100 people working at HotDoc, which has been a huge milestone. It was about 60 something people when I joined about 18 months ago. So there's been quite significant growth, which is a great thing. And our mission is to enable the best possible healthcare experience for everyone in Australia. Getting into CX. So when I joined HotDoc, my role was put in place as part of the leadership team. So I report directly to the CEO and sit on the leadership team. And parts of CX, and by CX, I'm talking specifically around the customer facing or customer interacting teams that we have at HotDoc. Pockets of it sat in different places, and there wasn't really any one owner, and that was problematic. So upon board advice, which is always a great start, our CEO and co-founders decided it was time to bring in some CX experience. And I worked as the head of CX in other organizations before this. And I was really attracted to the purpose-built sort of culture that HotDoc had, and the mission to, create a great healthcare experience for every Australian. So that led me to start building out the team. What I found was, or inherited, was sort of a small support team, a little bit of customer success happening, an onboarding team that was very high touch, and then began the build out. So our current structure is what you're seeing on the screen right now. So I have a manager who looks after customer onboarding. So that is all about getting customers started with HotDoc. I have a manager who looks after customer success, and for those of you who are familiar with software as a service or SaaS companies like HotDoc, customer success is core to all kind of global leading standards in software as a service, and they exist to build value for the customers and the business itself. I then have a manager who looks after all of our key accounts and enterprise accounts. We have some major customers who might have 300 clinics across Australia, or we deal with hospitals as well, so it's a different type of operating structure to manage compared to a small clinic that might have one practice principal who's a doctor, and 10 GPs working in the clinic. I then have a manager of customer support, content and knowledge, and I'll go into a little bit of detail on why that's combined together as we go on through the presentation. And then a manager of customer experience, who is probably akin to Greg's role of customer experience strategy that you have in your team. So really on the process architecture, engineering, customer journey mapping, human-centered design, and go to market, which is very important for us at HotDoc, because we're shipping features and changes weekly. So particularly during COVID, it has been even more, because healthcare as it has been delivered has transformed entirely. So keeping our customers up to date with new features and new value we offer is really fundamental value proposition of our customer experience team at HotDoc. What winning differentiators do we live by? So healthcare, I found out, is a very unique industry, and software operates very differently as compared to perhaps some other customer segments. It is quite high touch. It is quite personalized in how services are delivered. So what we want to do to differentiate ourselves at HotDoc and with our CX team, and so that it's a leading value proposition for new customers coming on board to us or deciding to switch from another provider, is to always lead with empathy. So one of the HotDoc values is be empathetic. And what we do is really instill in our learning and development and every interaction, core to everything is being really empathetic. We also offer personalized service. So our support turnaround times for request, we answer all requests within 2 hours. For customer success, for any issues that occur, it's less than 24 hours before you'll be contacted again. And really, we know the names of the children of all of our clinic managers, basically, because we're keen to go and visit them. Pre-COVID, we would have traveled interstate. We bring customers together in virtual networking all the time to share. And it's really around creating a network effect for our customers to really help each other deliver great healthcare experiences. Integrity is core to our brand also. It's part of our brand promise, is that your data will be secure, and a massive concern of patients and clinics and doctors is of any data or privacy breaches. So we entrust an awful lot of our work into making sure that we do things correctly. And then speed and ease. Patients inherently are anxious and worried when you see a doctor. What we want is to make sure that that is seamless and that you get speed and ease in your patient experience, and therefore better health outcomes and probably better continuity of care. So CX objectives and key results. So I thought it was important to just go through how we measure ourselves and what our drivers are. So CX and its metrics are top line in our organization. A lagging metric is churn rate. So that is the monthly recurring revenue that leads us to either not have a provider or go to another provider against total revenue. So our churn rate at HotDoc is particularly low, which is a great indicator of happy customers. And our lifetime value for a SaaS company is particularly high. So that's a great place to be in as someone who's heading up the CX team. But we've worked hard to get there, using a lot of predictive analytics around propensity to want to churn from us, and being really proactive at identifying those risks and addressing them immediately with customers, and really listening to why you think you'll get a better offering elsewhere, and working with product to take on that feedback and close that feedback loop with actual feature changes. As a top line metric for the company that I also have accountability of is Net Promoter Score. This is shared though across the company, because it's not a score that only CX can deliver. It needs to be at the heart of how marketing plan, how sales execute, how product prioritizes on the roadmap for what customers most need to eliminate their pain points and meet their goals. So having happy customers is obviously core to what we do, but also growing fast is core to what we do. And as I mentioned before, having an excellent CX function is part of how our sales team get new business on board. It has become a massive value proposition for what we do, no more so this year, when clinics have been struggling and had a really hard time with the transformation they've had to undergo themselves. So we do look at onboarding new practitioners and how easy we can make that and how low effort we can make that. And we measure that against, a customer effort score, but also the time to value that a customer is getting. So we do not want you to be billed before you've seen value. So what we really double down on is making sure that before your first invoice is sent out, have you actually got value? And oftentimes, if you haven't yet, we won't send that bill. That's a bit of our promise to our customers. Net dollar retention is all about being able to gain more revenue from each individual user. And that is basically a function of growing monthly recurring revenue and any upsells or cross-selling we'll have in the process, which is something that my customer success team will identify. And then our third core goal or objective at HotDoc is to inspire great work. And we measure that via employee net promoter score via Culture Amp, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. Again, it's top line. We aim to have greater than 90 as our eNPS score. And I'm glad to say the CX team is sitting at 89. So we're almost at that, but it's quite a remarkable score. Just moving on a bit to actually what each of my teams do and how this is made up of. So just starting on the left, customer onboarding is the first touch point you get post-sales. So customers are 4 times more likely to churn in the first 20 to 40 days of their experience on a software platform than they might do over the rest of the life cycle, unless you've got a major break in promise or a major pain point occurs or pricing becomes an issue. So customer onboarding needs to be, showing the value that have made you buy the product to begin with. So what we really do here is double down on helping you customize to your needs, get trained up, and make it as effortless as possible. So key function in the customer lifecycle. Customer success, I've mentioned before, and it's kind of an emerging world. I think, Brendan, you've dabbled in customer success over time as well. It is really around setting a value roadmap with the customer and saying, why did you buy this product? What are your pain points? I'm your trusted advisor. I will work as your business consultant with you, because as your coach in this, I want you to succeed. I want you to know that every penny you've spent is bringing you great value. So in turn, that is adding value for HotDoc or any other SaaS company, because it is making sure that customers are happy and therefore stay with you and are getting the value that they wanted to. So it's a really key listening post for the organization. And it's actually the function where most of our product feature requests come from. Directly from customers. So they act as a real connector back into the rest of the business. So it's a highly proactive role. Key accounts is customer success as well, but with more of a focus on very large customers who maybe operate as a corporate rather than other clinics that kind of have a clinic and patient experience first, rather than some corporates who may have like a business function helping their doctors run the business. So a different business model, and it was important to segment that out because it requires a different service approach. Moving on, customer advocates. So it's our support team. And as I mentioned, we focus on really high response times and also a great listening post for feature requests for our customers too. Knowledge and customer content. So within the support team, we have added in a customer content role very recently, actually. And we use software called SkillJar to provide on-demand learning to our clinics. A lot of our practice staff say that they're just too busy to, have a on phone or team viewer delivered training call. And unfortunate as it is, they do need to kind of keep up their skills before or after work. So it's just serving for a customer need, but it also allows us to be lower touch with regard to onboarding, as cost to serve, obviously in a startup that's scaling up, is really important as we're trying to grow to profitability. And then CX transformation, very similar to what Greg has in his space. It's all of the methodologies that help you deliver great change, with a high focus on delivering CX and customer and employee readiness for any feature changes or new products that are going to market. So almost embedded in the product team to make sure that whatever the product is going out to customers has really had the voice of customer dancing around it. how do we onboard, support, and retain happy customers in a space where you are trying to, become profitable as a startup, and cost to serve and cost to onboard are things that are dragging down on your revenues. So not dissimilar to Greg again, we started with mapping out all of the as-is customer journeys and then looking at opportunities through human-centered design to improve those journeys and reduce touch points and improve moments of truth across those. So we mapped out the whole life cycle, mapped out moments of truth, mapped out how we could improve those, had the clinics come in and look at those journeys with us when we were back in the office in those great days and have input into them, and really work with customers as well on validating some of the concepts we had at the very early stages. Implementing as well self-onboarding workflows. So onboarding was very high touch, very clunky. It didn't matter if you were 1 GP or 100 GPs, we were doing sort of 1:1 training. So to make that 1:many, we've made it very easy for clinics in the workflow of the product itself to be able to self-onboard yourself. And that's supplemented with all of that on-demand learning, training, and bite-sized chunks that we prepared. Next thing we were doing is supercharging our customer success team. So as I've mentioned, customer success actually get a lot of referrals for upsells. Like, they drive a lot of business growth, and they do that based on trusted relationships. So what we looked at, because we've so many different clinic sizes, from really small GPs right up to these large corporates, is what is the engagement strategy for each of these business models that these clinics operate within that will actually drive the best outcomes for those clinics. Then what we did was go through service design, journey mapping again, and then looked at segmenting our customers into different needs, and then also looking at the value that customers were going to drive for us and what value we could drive for them, and approach the service design, thinking about it from that customer point of view. And then just investing in tools of the trade. So buying in technology like customer success software, improvements in CRMs that could actually get us to where we want to be faster, rather than trying to build stuff ourselves or learn as we go. We just took in from the experts. Customer DIY is really all about us establishing support pages and great content. So we invest heavily in webinars, in our blog posts, in our clinical director delivering video content to clinics on how to run things well, in video content and how all of our products work and how you might use them to the best advantages for your clinic. So that's all about putting the power of knowledge into the customer's hands. Another thing to focus on is employee do-it-yourself or DIY. So we've invested heavily in Confluence as a bit of our Google for our employees, where you can actually get knowledge at your fingertips. And I think if we had not made that investment, it would have made moving to remote working at a time when telehealth transformed how clinics operated and all of our products changed within 2 weeks. It probably would have made that impossible. So that has been a real saving grace in how we were able to pivot really quickly during what has been a time that I'm sure all of us have had to pivot this year. We give every employee, based on tenure, etc., a minimum of $1,000 for a learning and development fund for you to invest in your own learning and development. And we frequently have inter-team sessions on sharing career stories, sharing your lightning talks where you share your skills with others. Our sales and CX team share skills and have lunch and learns all the time, which is great for sales and CX to have that great relationship. Inspiring great work is also important to us. As a healthcare company, mental health and well-being is super important. To support that, we have a clinical director who offers health and well-being coaching to every employee. We offer 12 hours of EAP to all of our employees as well. And every day at HotDoc, there is a health event, such as yoga classes or some other type of training or mindfulness training. So that's run at lunchtime every day. So it's really, what I'm honing in on here is, if you don't have great employee experience, you've got a damn hard battle to try and get great customer experience. And I think the fact that our engagement has been really high has led to a really high NPS as well. And our NPS is sitting at over 70 for Q3. Slight dip in Q4, I'll mention, but I'm really happy with over 70 for, the amount of change that's happened this year. Inspiring great work. Again, we offer $500 for every employee to set a big, hairy, audacious goal. That has been something that's really kept people motivated during COVID, which has been great, to focus on something other than your own isolation surroundings. And we've had a lot of sporting mentors come in and coach the teams who've engaged with this on how to get big, hairy, audacious goals and how to give yourself a focus outside of work so that your work life is also better. And then finally, onboarding, supporting, retaining customers and scaling well. We measure Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction after every support or knowledge-based article interaction, and customer effort score in that early lifecycle onboarding. The other way we look at voice of customer is we really have a distinct process around product and customer coming together weekly and looking at, has the weighting of what product features are most important for customers to see developed changed? And therefore, do we need to change the roadmap again? And often what happens is, if a customer has brought a feature request to us and it has been implemented, they can expect some surprise and delight and get a nice hamper of goodies to thank them for their insight and recommendations, because we've actually delivered it to all clinics. So it's a nice way of thanking customers for everything they do. And that is all from me. So thank you for listening.
That is absolutely amazing, Louise. Thank you for sharing. And the only one question I get out of that is, can I have a job? So,
absolutely, Brendan. I've got a couple of roles going at the moment.
Some of those incentives you do with your team are, outstanding. And congratulations to you for being able to pull it off and get the backing.
Yeah, I think our people and culture team we work with have been working really hard. Like, we had a great office manager, but she's basically been running #stay-at-home events every week for engaging people together. Wow. And, we do things like on Slack, have, a coffee catch up with a random group of people from the office. And we've just doubled down on every week. There's a Q&A session with all the leadership team. Mm-hmm. That is live over Zoom. So we've done a lot to kind of keep up comms, because I distinctly believe that great employee experience will lead you to people who just adore customers and focus on them a lot.
Yeah, it's good. No, that's perfect.
Couldn't agree more. Yes. Couldn't agree more. Now, I'm super mindful of time, and there's been some amazing questions that have come through. So I will just whiz through mine. And if anybody wants to have more of a chat with me offline, I can do that. But continue to send through the questions, and we'll try to get through as many as possible. So let's see if I can share my screen. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today as well. As Brendan sort of kindly introduced me, I'm the Managing Director of FT Executive, and I run our recruitment side of the business, where Brendan leads our charge of our CX consulting practice. I've had the pleasure of working in this space, in addition to business improvement and business transformation, for the last 8 years. And I'd say over the last 3 years, CX it's not new. It's not new, but as a discipline and as a function within a business, still quite new and evolving, and everybody sort of got their own flavor of it. So it's exciting space to play in. So I'm really happy to be here today. These are some of the clients, just quickly, that I've had the pleasure of working with, such a diverse group, all with similar challenges, but very, very different challenges as well. So treat your candidates like they are customers. CX and hiring are two topics I could literally talk about all day, given I run a recruitment business who specializes in CX, and my husband Brendan is a CX consultant. I'm pretty sure we do talk about this all day. My poor son. And look, as we all know, and sort of Louise alluded to it as well, there's an undeniable link between employee experience and customer experience. Companies that lead in customer experience have 60% more engaged employees. And study after study has shown that the return on investment for investing in that it speaks for itself. I think companies that have highly engaged employees can outperform their competitors by 147%. But one thing that can kind of be forgotten when it comes to employee experience and candidate experience, it's what actually happens before that they become an employee, and the actual candidate engagement and the candidate experience that comes through from that as well. Effective recruitment, it is a two-way street, and as much as you're looking to bring candidates in that fit seamlessly into your company, and they're also looking for organizations that fulfill their own goals and match their own values, especially CX professionals, especially CX professionals. There's a few facts for you. Nearly 4 out of 5 job applicants believe that the candidate experience serves as a really reliable indicator of how the company values its people. And not only that, 83% of talent say that a negative interview experience can actually destroy the perspective of that role or the company that they once liked. Now, in comparison, 87% of candidates say that once they've had a positive experience, can actually change their mind totally about a role and a company that they once actually doubted. And there's a really highly publicized one that happened back in the UK with Virgin Media. Their bad candidate experience cost the business $5 million. I'm not sure if anybody remembers that from back in 2017, I think, but I can send the article. But they turned it around. So it's actually a really interesting live case study if anybody's keen to look into it. Definitely Google that. And one thing as well is, like, has anybody here, and you can put it in the chat box, whether it's yes or no judgment, but has anybody here actually, apart from your own journey into the businesses that you work with, has anybody actually tried to apply for a role at your company or got a team member to do so? Anybody? For you? No? For you coming up? Who wants to admit that they have? It's okay, there's no judgment, I promise. There's no judgment. Okay, there's a few. Like, I didn't actually expect anybody to put their hand up, to be honest. For those that haven't, I highly recommend that you do. And it's not to have a go at internal recruitment teams or anything like that. It's just you don't know what you don't know, and it's just disintegral. So I highly recommend you try it. Or maybe even get somebody that doesn't work at your company who's totally unbiased, and get them to go through it and give you some very, very honest feedback. I have a lot on this topic of candidate experience. And so for everybody that's on the webinar today, I have written an ebook that'll go into a lot of hints and tips that you can do to ensure that you do give a good candidate experience, regardless of whether you've engaged an agency or whether you're doing it yourself, and a lot of tech that will support good candidate experience as well. So I will share that after the webinar. If I leave you with anything today, I think this quote kind of says it all. A diverse mix of voices leads to better discussions, decisions, and outcomes for everybody. Just like you see professionals do with your customer personas, do it for your team. Come up with team personas as well. I know a lot of people do that, but there's a lot of that don't either. And where I see, some companies go wrong in hiring, for a diverse team is they hire on likability. Or finding something like me. It's known as affinity bias. And it's a very, very hard one to overcome. But I mean, if you can picture somebody going down to the pub and having a drink, not that any of us can do that at the minute, it's likely that you picture them as a good cultural fit for your team. But I'm here to tell you, likability, whilst it's important, definitely don't discourage somebody because you like them, but it's not an indicator of how well somebody's going to perform in the workplace. And neither is the years of experience or sector experience or particular degrees. They're not reliable, and so why I never actually ask for them either. My advice is to just, instead of focusing on culture fit, is to look at hiring a culture ad and find somebody that can contribute unique qualities, diversity of thought, and have a positive impact on your team and your business moving forward. If I lean on the pub analogy again, think about somebody you want to have a drink with. Think about somebody who you want to win a pub trivia with. And think about it like that way when you're building your team. Diversity, knowledge, experience, and backgrounds will always improve your chances of success, especially when you're in the CX world. I've written a blog on unconscious bias, and there's a lot of them. So again, happy to share that with you after the webinar as well. But look, in essence, diversity attracts diversity. And that's kind of it. That's a short version. So thank you so much. And I know, as I say, we've got quite a lot of questions. So I'll just stop sharing for a second, so I can come and see the questions. Brendan, you've got most of them there.
I do, and thank you, Laura, for going through that. I think that's it's one of the biggest ones that we always kind of keep banding on about, that kind of culture add rather than culture fit. When it resonates with a lot of people when they hear it, but it's not necessarily something they do in practice when they actually go about the recruitment.
100%.
Guys, we've had some really interesting questions come through, especially in the chat and the Q&A. To start flicking through a few of them, Greg, the first question that came in for you was, where is your beard? I don't know if you used to have a beard, but
What?
somebody asked, Greg, where's your beard?
Where's my beard? I shaved off this morning.
Oh, okay. Look, a few of the other questions that came in over the last few days directly to Laura, let me pull them up just on the separate email. There's some really good ones. Scrolling through. Top three skills.
I've answered a couple on the Q&A for you, Brendan, just around the council stuff. So those interested can have a look at the answers there.
Okay. Top three skills on your CX wish list that you are not non-negotiable on a team success. So I think that's a really interesting one. I think, Louise, you might have touched on that a little bit, but I suppose we throw that over to Greg. When you're building out your team, what are those kind of the wish list that you have for building out, and things that you will not deviate from when in the process of what you're looking for?
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. When I was reflecting on this, it was obviously your technical experiences, but for me, one of the first questions I always ask, not just joining CX team, but obviously those folks who want to join local council or public is why local council? What's the motivation for moving from private to public? So, or staying in public, or even coming to Stonnington. So I really want to understand intentions and motivations as a very first instant, because if you're emotionally invested in what we provide to the community, then I think there's a lot of that carries you through the difficult times. You know, I've tried some startups, and I've found that if you're not emotionally invested, then you just don't get through, regardless of what the financial, pay packet is at the end of the day. If you're not emotionally invested, then it doesn't work for me. That's the first one. I guess from a technical perspective, it's three. It's empathy and change management, or I say customer empathy and change management. Self-explanatory. Second, for me, being a process person, it's about process measurement and then the design. I think product design or service design is absolutely critical. And then the third one is you've got to be digital, you've got to be technology aware, and that'd be my top three with a little kick of around motivation.
I think that's an interesting one as well, as you kind of touch on all those different three, and that's how CX has really evolved in the last 7-8 years. It's moved away from that kind of focus of just literally talking to the customer and how we interact with the customer, to looking at all that transformational piece of process improvement internally, what technology we're actually using to communicate, and that central source of truth. So I echo those sentiments as well. And the next one that kind of came up is, what are the tools and techniques used to understand the CX capabilities of an individual or team? Louise, if I throw that over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thinking about when I joined HotDoc, one of the first things I looked at was assessing the CX maturity within the team. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who are CXPA members or even not, there's some great resources there for kind of global standards on assessing your maturity across every kind of component of CX, mm-hmm. which there's 6, including voice of customer, service design, etc. So I think that's a great place to start, just to assess where you are now and mm-hmm. where you want to be. Recently, I've completed training. I think somebody asked how many people in my team. There's just over 30 now, so we're almost the same size as the product and dev team. I've recently just completed everyone in CX being trained in human-centered design. and putting it into practice through products that then our co-founders will kind of judge and weigh in on and decide which one will go ahead to be a feature request or an experience change. I think that's a great skill to have, so that you're always curious and questioning. So there are a couple of the things that I think are good to have to assess your capabilities or to lift your capabilities.
Okay. And next one that came through, what sort of tech is currently available for being developed for analytics and insights purposes, customer touch points, presentations, etc.? Greg, over to you. Seems you're the tech side.
Sure, thanks, Brendan. I think there's quite a number of tools out there. I obviously haven't sampled them all, but I think for us, we're obviously, because we're starting quite early, so we're still quite young in our journey. For us, it's a really interesting question, because we don't, at the moment, we have to make sure there's equity in the way that we reach out to our municipality. We've got all types of ages and access to technology. Some don't. Like you would have seen in the stats there that we've got about 13%, 8% don't have a internet connection. So we really have to be cognizant around how we can gather those insights, whether it's digitally or old-fashioned through the phones or through existing channels. So one of the ways which we do like to capture those insights are through existing channels, and to get that as quickly as we can to a central CRM system that we have. It's a bit clunky at the moment, but I think that's the main consideration. It's not quite around the tool, but it's about how do we make sure we can get a number of processes and tools so that we can get access to as many people as possible to get that diverse range of thought. Otherwise, we're not doing our job as a local council and bringing voice to as many folks as possible.
Okay. And again, kind of, guys, I'll probably get the panelists to answer some of these questions offline. We're so conscious of time, but we will jump to one or two more. One that's really close to my heart as well, and that kind of customer centricity. And this probably goes to both yourself, Greg, and Louise. What do you believe is critical to developing customer-centric culture across all levels of the organization, in particular those teams who are not customer-facing?
Yeah, I think you have to have some sort of exercise in walking in the customer's shoes. So pre-COVID, that would mean if a developer joined, they'd accompany a customer success manager on a customer visit. So you can actually see what it's like to be in the waiting room at a practice, looking at the users, using the software and answering the questions face to face. We have try and keep up customer contact with our, particularly people who don't work directly with customers, like developers or even the marketing team to some extent. And I think it's all about storytelling. So at our town halls, every week, every month that we have them, I'll always tell a story about something that's happened for a customer and who cross-functionally has collaborated on driving some great feedback or some great outcomes, and just using the channels we have to celebrate where people have put customer first and just doing it consistently. I think those things help. So definitely storytelling.
Cool. Everything that Louise said, and possibly for us, there's actually an acknowledgement that you're part of a larger process. So some people feel that they're quite isolated in our organisation. They might go pick up the waste. So waste management is a really, really interesting thing. I've never been as interested in waste management as I am now. Although I make sure everyone's got their FOGO bin and doing their composting. Yep. Okay. So yeah, it's there is a moment of truth when literally that bin gets emptied. And it might be like a 5-second window where the truck comes along and picks up the bin. But to get to that point, there's every touch point in the organisation just to pick up that particular bin. So I think there's always a story to tell around an end outcome and people's role in the sequence of activities. And then there's always the last part in our value chain, which is complaints handling and escalations, which invariably ends up having half of management involved, or at least the call center anyway. So I think you can make that linkage between something so simple and yet that person's role in that. And I think it's just continually reminding people to say, yes, you might be doing this part of the process, but it leads on to the next part. And, you know, if you've got some poor quality in your process and you hand that over to the next person, how would you feel? So yeah, for me, that goes back to those principles. But yeah, there's heaps of those stories around, and yeah, I just love what I'm doing at the moment. It's just so incredibly connected to the community. That's really exciting.
Yeah, good. And guys, thank you very much. I think we just ran over time, but I want to thank you both for joining us. There's been so many questions, and I will send the questions over to Greg and Louise after the event as well, and see if there's any particular ones we can get answered. Or myself and Laura will answer any of those relevant ones as well and send them back out. If anyone does have any questions, I'm sure you can all connect with Greg and Louise and myself and Laura on LinkedIn if you haven't done so already. But again, thank you guys for joining us. Really appreciate it, and we look forward to catching up with you all again soon.
Yeah, thanks all. It's been great.
Thanks everyone. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe.